There are three key areas I think raise real concerns over the coming decades with the rollout and acceleration of machine learning. The first is the consolidation of power through defense. Let's begin with a scenario. The year is 2040 and a general in your nation state is planning an operation to capture a key military location. The location is well defended and he anticipates there will be significant losses on both sides. Do they send in human military personnel, or would they use drones and robots? If you speak to anyone responsible for military decisions, they will tell you that it's without question the second option. The decision makers won't put humans with families in danger unless they absolutely have to. I think this is pretty uncontentious so far. We're seeing drones and unmanned devices widely used for military operations already. As these devices become more capable, they will become ever more widely used for defense purposes. The immediate reaction most people have that come to this realization that we are inevitably building armies of AI robots is predominantly negative. However, there is a potential for this to benefit humanity. In the future, the loss of life through conflicts could become rarer to a point where it's just not the norm and not accepted. In bot versus bot battles, when one side's technical capabilities are diminished, it provides a key moment and existential option to surrender without any loss of life. There are, however, significant negatives and risks associated with this somewhat inevitable future. The first is that the world's superpowers are going to compete for AI superiority in the same way they compete for air superiority, with the rollout of new fighter planes. This forces the pace at which we must develop and build and roll out AI systems, something we'll come back to later. The second big risk, and perhaps my biggest concern with AI, is that it's going to consolidate power. Small countries won't be able to compete with the computational power of superpowers. While that's the case already to some degree, there is still currently a human cost to warfare. Here's a thought experiment for you. Would the US have pulled out of Afghanistan if they already had an army of robots to fight the Taliban? Carry that thought experiment on and think about how geopolitics plays out with unlimited military resources and no human cost of conflict. It seems possible to me that there will be more conflict, not less, in the future. That's without going into conspiracy theories and Eisenhower's farewell warning about the influence of the military-industrial complex. The end result is perhaps a consolidation of power around either a few nation-states, superpowers and their allies, or a single global entity which asserts control through technological superiority. Now let's shift gears to one of the most talked about impacts of AI. Is machine learning really coming for your job, and what are the social economic impacts of job losses through the next generation of automation? It's easy to picture a future where robots and AI handle all the boring stuff, leaving humans free to pursue creative passions, drink lattes, and star in TikTok dances. There are, however, issues with this romanticized image. The first is the speed at which it's going to take place. We touched on this earlier. We are talking years rather than decades for self-driving autonomous cars. In fact, Waymo already have a fleet of driverless taxis in San Francisco. The full implications of AI-powered automation and the impact on our jobs isn't fully understood yet. As a blockchain developer, there is still plenty of work available to me currently, but I don't know how good ChatGPT-5 is going to be. If they can achieve AGI in the next few years, as Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, has suggested, then it might be the case that non-technical founders don't need devs anymore. If a large language model is as capable as a human, and you don't need to feed it pizza and put up with its nerd tantrums and pronouns, then most founders are going to probably pay that $20 a month for the subscription. This is as good of a time as any to ask you to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because I'm pinning my hopes for the future on the value of non-AI generated video content. It doesn't stop with drivers and developers. Autonomous systems powered by machine learning can process data, answer phones, translate documents, run factories, and yes, even edit YouTube video scripts. As AI automation disrupts various industries, it will create a weird economic dynamic. The cost of producing goods goes down, but so do the number of people who can afford to buy them. Wealth inequality has risen dramatically since the mid-1970s, and with less demand for a human workforce, this could accelerate the issue. It's somewhat inevitable that nation-states control the AI models, either directly or indirectly through influence. In the following clip, Mark Andreessen of venture capital firm A16Z discusses his meetings with government officials within the US administration.
They basically said AI is going to be a game of 2 or 3 big companies working closely with the government And we're going to basically wrap them in a, I'm paraphrasing, but we're going to basically wrap them in a government cocoon. We're going to protect them from competition. We're going to control them, and we're going to dictate what they do.
The same government have the ability to print money at will through debt issuance and distribute that however they see fit. Over the last 50 years, that has led to an ever-expanding massive wealth gap. There's no signs of this slowing down, and perhaps we're heading towards a trigger point at some point in the future where the difference between the haves and the haves not is just no longer acceptable. Historically, whenever we've introduced new technologies from the printing press to the internet, people have panicked about job losses. And we did lose jobs, but new types of work popped up to replace them. The question is whether this AI wave will create enough new opportunities and whether the average worker can realistically transition to these new roles. Where is human interaction valuable in a world where teenagers have panic attacks when ordering food from a waiter? We might see a rise in jobs focusing on emotional intelligence, creativity, and personal interaction. AI can't replicate the genuine human relationships and interactions. There's no stopping this progression either. Once the self-driving cars are established and proven safer, cheaper, and more efficient, there's no going back. The world is changing, and the way we work is changing, and this is going to happen in our lifetimes. Plan your careers accordingly. This is where we start to get into the tinfoil hat area of the video, but let me first start with a true story. In 2010, security experts discovered a highly sophisticated computer virus wreaking havoc on industrial control systems, specifically Iran's nuclear facilities. But Stuxnet wasn't just any malware, it was a precision strike. Designed by experts, reportedly a joint US-Israel effort, Stuxnet targeted systems controlling the centrifuges used in uranium enrichment. The issue was that these systems were air-gapped and had no connection to the internet to prevent hackers from accessing them. To circumvent this minor technical issue, the three-letter agencies developed one of the most brilliant and terrifying pieces of code ever written. It used not one but 3 zero-day exploits to access remote systems and then mitigate itself, spreading like the world's worst computer virus. It's estimated that at its peak it was active on over 200,000 devices across 115 countries. It lay dormant on these devices, hidden and waiting for the moment when a nuclear scientist decided to use a USB drive to update the software on the air-gapped machines. It didn't just disable the machinery, it made them malfunction subtly while reporting normal operations. Stuxnet manipulated the programmable logic controllers to periodically increase and decrease the centrifuge's rotational speeds outside of safe operating ranges, sometimes spinning them too fast and then slowing them down abruptly. Iranian scientists were left scratching their heads as centrifuges mysteriously broke down, seemingly without cause. The fallout was massive. Iran's nuclear program faced significant delays, but Stuxnet's exposure also revealed how vulnerable critical infrastructure worldwide could be to cyber attacks. It was the first known instance of a cyberweapon causing physical damage, marking the dawn of cyber warfare. Stuxnet wasn't just a worm, it was a Pandora's box showing the world how software could quietly, invisibly, and devastatingly spread and sabotage real-world infrastructure. Now let's get to the conspiracy theory part. The possibility that a superintelligent AI could use a similar method to propagate out of its controlled environment and run amok like a computer virus. I discussed in a previous video artificial superintelligence and why human-level cognition isn't a ceiling for machine learning capabilities. If human researchers could create Stuxnet, then it's possible that a superior AI system could too. Not to spread a virus, but to propagate an ever-evolving version of itself around every internet-connected device on the planet. It may sound a bit far-fetched, and it's not a realistic threat today given the capabilities of AI's current systems. But we have discussed the need for accelerated development, and who knows how far ahead military AI systems are to what is available publicly. For an AI to pull this off, it needs a few things. It needs to access external networks, it needs some level of autonomy, meaning it decides for itself to replicate. It needs to find or create critical software vulnerabilities that let it slip into new systems, and it needs the ability to actually run on those systems. That might be the hardest part given AI's appetite for resources like GPU power. But as AI becomes more optimized, or as computer power grows with Moore's law, that might not be such a big hurdle. It takes a lot of power to train a large language model, but far less to run it once it's been trained. By 2040, we're going to have artificial superintelligence systems without doubt, perhaps long before then. How do we know they will remain value aligned with their creators? And how do we ensure their creators don't program them to break out in the same way computer viruses were written by hackers? If in theory it's possible to create an AI-powered computer virus that can spread like Stuxnet and consume resources from devices around the world to improve and evolve, can we guarantee that one of the 8 billion people on this planet would not try it? We can just cut the power, right, and go back to hunting with bows and arrows. Well, sure, assuming the robot armies of the future don't come with batteries. I did warn you that this was going to bleed into tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. And I'll leave you with a closing thought, which is perhaps the worst case scenario and certainly not the most probable. If Stuxnet ASI 2.0 is a non-zero possibility, could it be an existential threat if it decides that humanity is not beneficial to its evolving goals?